United Sydney, how are we going? I see a couple of thumbs up. I see a couple of woos. How are you all feeling? Refreshed? Energized? Good lunch? You're all staring at me very blankly. I just want you to know this is going to be an interactive session, so I expect you all to participate. Just kidding, you don't have to participate, it's fine. We have these guys participating. Welcome. This is a welcome to games panel, just talking about games, you know, because we haven't been doing that for the past couple of days, or maybe our entire careers, who knows. I'm Kelsey. I'm the lead community manager at Bethesda Softworks for Australia and New Zealand. And I have a wonderful panel of people here with me today. And because I am really bad at pronunciation and also reading the screen behind me, I might get them to introduce themselves. How about we start with the wonderful person right next to me, Paulina.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Paulina. Up until recently, I've been a senior producer at Wargaming Sydney. And now I've recently joined MathSpace as a senior project manager there, product manager.
Congrats.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremy. I'm a programmer from Blowfish Studios here in Sydney.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I am the meat in the Blowfish Studios sandwich. I'm a producer and I also do game design.
My name is Hussein. I'm also from Blowfish Studios. I'm a 2D artist, but I specialize in UX and UI design.
Hi everyone, my name is Inga Pflomer. That's why we do not pronounce names here. I'm from SMG Studio. I'm a head of QA and deployment, and that's about it.
And I'm Ruben. I'm the founder and director of No More Studios, a pretty small games studio and consultancy around Sydney.
Thank you, everyone. So I will start with the obvious question that I'm sure you've all been asked 1,000 times. How did you get here? What's your journey been? How did you get into this industry? Start with you, Ellen. You look excited. You look excited.
I'm always excited. I always wonder how far back this journey should begin when I talk about it. Birth. My earliest memories of video games. No, I was one of those people that was just, I was very young. I had a brother that was 4 years older than me and parents that were totally okay with both of us looking at games and things like that. So I remember very clearly seeing Super Mario Brothers demoed on like a toy shop display cabinet and just being absolutely captivated by it. And you know, we brought it home and I was rubbish at it because I think I was like 4. And my brother was much better, so I spent a lot of time watching him play games and slowly play games myself. We both wanted to work in games, but ultimately he went and worked for Macquarie Bank.
Fascinating.
Yes, yes. I actually ended up studying theatre and multimedia design, so doing a little bit of Flash and things like that. And from there, I entered some competition to make a game with a bunch of people from my uni, and then we got a job at Interzone Games in Perth, if anyone has heard of that company. That died 10 years ago during the global financial crisis and lots of white-collar crime. So
this panel has kicked off very interestingly.
It's exciting.
White-collar crime, all right.
From there, a bit of a big gap, and then more recently was working at Gameloft in Auckland as a producer, and then came here into Blowfish Studios, where I've been for 4 years now.
Wonderful. Ruben, have you got a theatre background?
I don't have. I wish I had a theatre background, honestly. No, I again kind of grew up playing games, and in my head I always was like, oh, I'm going to be a game developer. And I got to uni. I was never much of a studious kind of guy. I was picking a course, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do game design, and my parents were like, no, don't do that. Do programming instead. That way you can, you know, learn more general skills and choose to apply them in games if you want to. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But eventually I decided to do programming. I thought my parents were definitely wrong, but they were totally right. Guys, listen to your parents. So I went off and did programming for a while at some startups. I worked at a startup in California for about a year. And then I came back home to do a teaching degree, and then got kind of halfway through that and was kind of building games on the side and had enough fun doing that I was just like, no, I'm going to stop doing teaching and just keep doing games. So it's a bit of a weird journey, but I think everyone has a weird journey getting into games, right?
I feel like it should be a competition. Who has the weirdest journey? Jeremy, do you reckon you could be a contender?
Probably not, but let's take a look. So typical story: played a lot of games, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, the big definitive ones in my early childhood. I actually, not sure if I should admit this, but I had a modded PlayStation, so my Metal Gear Solid was in black and white, and I thought that's how the game was for the longest time, and it wasn't until almost a decade and a half later I saw it in a magazine that it's actually a color game. But after that, I kind of had this standard uni sort of experience, just kind of picked a topic. I liked computing. After that, went into work for a bank for a while in a call center, and after 2-3 years of that, when all my patience for other human beings kind of got burned away, I decided I needed to quit. And then I ended up at AIE, studying programming there, and then I made the jump to games. Yeah.
Wonderful. How about you, Inga?
Okay.
You look keen to talk.
Oh yeah, my journey is really strange. In case it's not clear from my accent, I'm Russian. I was actually a very popular writer in Russia. I have 13 books published. And there was a game based on one of my books. And that kind of got me into game development, at least interested in game development in general. And then I moved to Australia, and I thought, probably a Russian writer in Australia is not the best career idea for me. So I started looking into games, and SMG Studio took a chance on me. They took me without any experience, and yes, that's how I ended up in games.
Wonderful. His name?
I also have a slight weird one. I grew up, all of my family's into gaming, and when I say all of them, I mean all of them except my mum. So my brother, my sister, and my dad.
Bet your mum had a great time.
Oh, she's like, when your dad dies, I'm gonna throw the PlayStation, throw all the technology, She was like the complete opposite of us, but like each one of us was really interested in gaming, but we never thought of gaming as a career. So I actually, out of high school, went and studied psychology. I finished my bachelor's in psychology. I did a whole bunch of like different jobs, but I think the job which really defined where I want to go, I ended up working as a social worker / project worker, helping refugee youth transition into the Australian society. I worked in the public sector for a while, and there was so much stigma against the community. I realized it's very difficult to kind of support this community transition into the Australian society if the Australian society isn't necessarily open to accepting them. And so I had a strength in like art and the creative side. I thought maybe a way for me to help the kind of the nation accept them is to be able to create content that showcases their lives. And so while working, I was like studying how to do animation, a lot of like my own personal R&D stuff. And then one day I took a risk and I told my job I'm resigning. And for 3 months, it was like doing client work, creative client work, and just working on like professional development until I applied for Blowfish I was like applying to different places, but I wanted to do animation, but I'm like, someone mentioned to me, it was actually a Unity training at one of the colleges. Do you know how they do their single-day training? And the person who's running the training course, I'm like, I really want to do animation. And he's like, well, now in Unity, you can actually use the timeline. And that's when they started marketing their timeline stuff. So he was like, he's like, if you think about gaming, it's pretty much interactive storytelling. And I'm like, that sold me. So I applied to do 3D modeling at Blowfish Studios, like to do an internship. And they called me up and they're like, we have this UX UI position. Ellen's still confused how it happened, but they're like,
no, I was there.
I
mean, I wasn't physically there.
But like it was like random and all of the sudden. But I think Ben was really good in terms of taking a risk. He saw that I had the psychology background. I'm able to like empathize with people, and I've worked as a researcher before, but I also had like some creative skills. And he's like, if you combine them all, that's UX and UI, and it kind of, that's how I ended up in the studio.
Nice. I feel like you've all got a very varied history, but I do need to ask you, Paulina, can you complete the trifecta of a very, very varied background?
Mine is actually a bit more traditional.
Well, that's good. We
You
needed
guys have
someone who was
amazing
very
stories.
traditional.
So my dream as a kid was actually to make movies. And my first encounter with video games was when I played The Dig by LucasArts. And that completely blew my mind. That was like a movie by one of the best production companies in the world made a game. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing. You can actually, with less budget, make a more interactive experience. And that was a bit of the spark there. And then when I had to make a career choice, I was in between doing modeling or I grew up in Argentina. There wasn't much of a future as an artist. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a multimedia career path at all. So when I had to choose, I had to either go full-on fine arts or full-on software engineering. And that's the path that I pursued, software engineering, because I thought that would give me better tools to make a career path in multimedia. So yeah, so I suffered through like 7 years of university because there it's really, really tough. But by the end, I came out standing. I had some experience doing software development, just a regular software company. And then at that point, I traveled around Europe, came back to Argentina and thought, okay, what do I want to do? I really want to go to Pixar and make movies there. That's my dream. But what can I do here in Argentina in the meantime? And that's when I discovered that there was actually a game development industry there, which is something that I had no idea existed. And that's when I joined a startup that was doing web games for Lego. And I had the best time of my life there. And then when I traveled to Australia, that's when I joined Wargaming Sydney.
Wonderful. You all kind of touched on the moment that you realized games could be something that you could do as a career. Do you still feel the same way that you did when you first realized, oh my gosh, games are something that I can do? Has it changed since you started, or do you kind of feel like you're on the same trajectory? I'm opening this up to all of you. You all look like you're ready to talk. Just jumping out of your seats to have a conversation.
I think, if anything, it's become, when I first started thinking about working in games, I had in my mind, it's like, oh, I'm going to work in games. And it's like, wow. But you'd kind of realize over time how much of a traditional job it should be. If you're working in games and you see it too differently to me as software development, obviously I'm a bit more of a programmer side than some of the more art-inclined people on the panel here, but the further you stray away from traditional software development practices, the worse things end up going because those practices exist for a reason. So I kind of have learned over time to see it as a job that I have to, I obviously have fun making games, but you kind of have to see it as a traditional job and you have to kind of get into that mindset, otherwise things go wrong, I think.
Yeah, speaking of traditional jobs, what do your days actually look like? I'm imagining it would all be very different.
Sure.
Just jump in,
yeah,
guys.
I think my studio is probably the smallest of anybody up here. So for me, I wear a few different hats throughout the day or throughout the week. It's probably about half my time like managing projects, so either talking to clients or just kind of chatting to the team and seeing where their head's at, or kind of helping people who have problems, kind of getting them unstuck. And the other half is like programming stuff, so making mechanics for things and helping it all kind of mesh together.
How about you, Jeremy? What does your day look like?
A lot of staring at a screen. I guess I actually had that question for the panel, I just realized, was because I think we can kind of overgeneralize a little bit and say you're kind of either staring at a screen or you're dealing with people. And I want to say that's basically what the jobs are. That's kind of how it works. Like, if you're a lead or a manager, you're dealing with your internal people, or you're dealing with external clients, depending on your role. And if you're kind of a bit more buffered and internal, like I guess I am, out of other people here, then I just kind of sit in a screen and I don't speak for 8 hours, and then I hopefully have something to show other people at the end of the day, or I don't, and then that's my day.
Is that a challenge? Do you find that something that's difficult for yourself?
No, I guess I'm kind of an introverted person, so it's pretty easy to sit down and stuff like that. I do wish I spoke a bit more to other people, I guess. But yeah, so I guess, do other people think that's kind of true, that your job is either you're staring at a screen or you're dealing with other people?
I don't know, I do both, like 50-50.
Yeah,
me too.
Because yes, as a head of QA department, I have to oversee the deployment process and all of the deliveries that we have to deliver during the sprint. And also I work closely with developers to see where they are, because the stuff that we deliver, they have to develop first. And at the end, I think my day starts with like stand-ups for most of the people, I guess. And then we'll check the tickets, check the tasks, assign them, and see through them, because QA work, there's a lot of this. Quite often when we hire on people, they're like, I love games. I'm going to play games all day in QA. Like, yeah.
Enjoy that.
Enjoy that. It's just there's a lot of planning involved, a lot of communication, because in my experience, one of the biggest issues in literally everywhere in tech industry is the communication side, because we have a lot of introverted people. People who enjoy staring at the screens, but you still, if you're a member of a team, you still have to communicate. You still have to have the common goals, work toward the common goal as a team. So all communication is really, really important.
Absolutely. Paulina, as a producer,
Yeah, so I was
communication.
thinking, as a producer, I've made a bit of a journey too. So I've been both a project manager and a product manager. And I think the difference there is, of course, my focus is people. But I've had, in doing those two roles, I've looked at that through different lenses. As a project manager, my lens was mostly around process and how do I get this group of people to work very effectively and to work very well together, and to make sure that we're getting the best out of the team. So then my conversations with the people were around that. How do we work better together as a team? What methodology do we use? Do we use Scrum or Agile? If this sprint we feel like we're not getting what we want out of working together as a team, then what are the things that we can do next sprint to work better? And that was my project manager lens. But then as a product manager, more / producer, my lens was, are we building the right game? Is this the game that will blow people's minds and that will be a success? So then my conversations with the team and with the people are around that, what the game is. So there's a lot more playtesting, focus conversations, UX, what was the feedback that we got back from UX? The players, the beta testers didn't like this feature that we were working on, so what do you guys feel would be the best thing to work on? So those are a bit the two different lenses that I use.
You've touched on a really interesting point there, which I feel like is the crux of everything that we do, no matter what kind of role we have, which is the game. Pretty important. What have you guys worked on that you're proud of? What are you working on right now? Let's talk about games.
Woo! Video games, yeah.
Vidya.
I don't know, I think the biggest thing that I've worked on was Ice Age Adventures, which is a freemium mobile game at Gameloft. I can't remember how many people played it, but like it was a huge number of downloads, and you know, it had voiceovers from Ray Romano and Dennis Leary and John Leguizamo, whose name I can never pronounce. And so that was just like a big endeavor to take on. Gameloft is a multinational company. They've got studios remote that are responsible for lots of different parts of the game, and there was a lot of communication between those different parts just to get the game out and to keep it live and to get it working. And if anything went wrong, it was like, I don't know, millions of people unable to play the game. Like it was serious, and it was very stressed. Go, go, go. There was overtime. There was crunch. I joined at a time that there were limits in place by the New Zealand government of paid overtime and a limit on the number of hours of overtime you could do in a day, essentially. So I came in when it wasn't crazy, but there are horror stories from that as well. It's, you know, crunch is never a good thing, and overtime is not a good thing, and it's, you know, trying to get something done for a deliverable once in a while, okay, but like, oh, games don't ship unless you do this, like, not cool. Which is a sad part of our industry, unfortunately, and something that should be looked at and you know, revised. Aside from that, I mean, the thing that I'm personally most proud of is working on Stormboy, which was released end of last year. And I think the thing that people don't really quite understand about it is that we delivered it across all platforms, which is iOS, Android, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, tvOS, macOS, and we got it from the first pitch, to launch in, I think it was 9 months, and working part-time between that and other projects for clients and things like that, which is absurd. So if anyone wonders why the game was so small, because we chose quality and we had a hard timeline, and we chose that over quantity and crunch and pushing things.
It's also like a children's book. It's like that thin. Like, it's not like The Hobbit. You can't blow it out to 3 movies that are like 12 hours long.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was just going to pick up from that. I think a lot of studios here, they develop their own games. Except I know Bethesda published games.
I don't count, it's fine. I'm just here to moderate.
But I think Blowfish is like, as much as we do development, we also do like publishing games. So sometimes as an employee, it becomes quite difficult to become attached to the game when you have so many little games to work on. So what you do become attached to is the process, the little things, like someone's like, make this pop up and animate, and that's your pride, this like part in the larger project. And I think that helps you work through and be attached to the work that you do for a longer period of time, rather than pushing yourselves feeling like you have to feel attached to this project. And if you don't feel attached to this project, then there's no point. But
It's like love of the craft rather than love of the project.
That's a really good point. And I mean, does anybody else have thoughts on attachment to the things that they make and how they cope with that? What they're attached to right now, maybe?
So I've got a similar story in that I started off at a small startup where we were making the whole game in the studio, and that's when we were releasing web games for Lego. So we could build a game from start to finish in about 6 months, maybe a year would be the longest one. But then working for a company like Wargaming, which is a very big company, chances are you'll be working on a small feature that is part of a bigger production. So in a way, you become a lot more specialized. So relating back to what that bigger game is might also be hard, because your focus is on this one specific feature that you're building. A few years ago, we built a 3D replay feature for the World of Tanks console game. So at the end of a battle, players could watch a 3D video of the whole battle, so they could change perspectives. They could see the battle from their perspective, then change to the enemy and watch it from their perspective. And that was a major piece that we worked on. So in that case, the attachment was more towards the feature than the bigger game.
I think the best, in my experience, the best thing about working in a small indie team, that you can try different roles and get attached to different parts of the project. So I think you love your craft at the end of the day, right? You love what you're doing, that's where you're in game development. But in a small studio, you can try different aspects of a game. One day, on one project, you can work on UI. In another day, you can work on physics, for example. Or one day, you can work in QA, and then you can do level design. All of this happens, and I think that's a very good opportunity just for people who are looking into work in game development. Like, you can start anywhere, and you can end up in a completely different place, but that's what's amazing about it. Also, like, maybe you don't start in a position where you want to start, but then it gives you an ability to grow into the new positions. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Ruben?
I'm going to be a bit of a Debbie Downer here and bring down the room a bit. Because I think we all do care about our craft, but I think it is important, and something that I found it hard to kind of learn when I started a game studio was you have to learn to detach yourself from having a thing as your baby, right? Because it is, obviously it's a creative pursuit, but also you're in there to, I mean, if you don't sell copies of this game, you're not going to make money, and your studio is going to die, and the people that you like working with, you'll have to not employ them anymore, and all these, quite serious things. And you kind of, it took me a while to learn, like, oh, I can't just let myself make another cool feature, because that means, maybe it's not a huge impact, but over time it adds up, and the release of this thing is delayed, and that means that, whatever else kind of starts to go wrong. I think it's an important mindset to get into to obviously be passionate about what you're doing, but also to try and develop a critical eye for your own work.
How do you navigate that attachment versus making sure that you're making something that's successful from a commercial standpoint?
I'm terrible at it. So the way I do it is I get a lot of other people to play our stuff because I'm never able to see the flaws, or I see them and I think, oh, that's fine, you know. But when other people are playing your things, they will tell you whether it's fine or not. Usually not. And that's a great way to get like impartial feedback. Is by just having a bunch of people play your thing and say, hey, this thing is confusing, or this part that you're used to because you've played it 30, 40 times every day, this is actually really weird and it doesn't quite make sense. It takes an outside eye sometimes to get a lot of that, which is why a QA team exists.
But also, when you have a team, if the relationships are good inside the team, they will tell you. Like, just listen to your people. That's a very good idea, I would say.
Yeah, people in general, obviously, what is building these products. Do you guys have any tips for how to make a team work when you're working together and you're often different people and you're all working together on one big cause?
Yep. Just honestly, it is talking all the time. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed just over the last couple of years working in games and stuff like that is just you gotta have people buying in to your product or your project. If you don't have that buy-in at all, people can go in and it's in any job you can do. You can turn up, you put in the minimum amount of effort, the minimum amount of passion or creativity or something like that, and you can get it out the door. But like that little extra effort to make things work and be a lot better, that just comes from buy-in. And that is a really hard balancing act, or skill to learn, I guess. So I guess it's one of those things where I find that you just need someone to have that vision. And maybe, you can't just let them have free reign, because obviously, as soon as someone has a vision, I mean, when people are familiar with game schools and anything like that, you ask someone what their perfect game is, it's World of Warcraft 3 or something like that. It's an MMO that they're going to build with 5 people, and it's going to be persistent, it's going to remember everything that you do, and it's just going to go on and on and on. So you can't obviously let them do that, because you can't do it.
All producers and project managers are having a heart attack at that thought right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, you need someone to be able to sell that vision, because if you don't, then it's just not there, and people will turn up. And I've definitely been guilty of this for myself. I've turned up and I've put in my minimum amount of hours, and I've just gone home, and that's it.
So is it a case of finding somebody who can articulate that vision? Is it something that's built in you, or is it something that you can learn?
I'm going to say it's something that you can learn. Having led Stormboy and leading another project now, to me, coming from a theatre background, one of the things that I saw a lot of was good directors, and having a good theatre director that can sit there and go like, what are you trying to do there? Like, I see you're trying to do something, but I can't figure out what it is. Tell me what you're trying to do so I can try and redirect you to help you give, to see how that goes. And having a director whose role is ultimately to represent the audience member, to make sure that they get the correct feeling, the correct experience, but a director that is willing to be wrong, that is open enough for you to ask questions, that is willing to help you work together and build towards a shared vision of the project. Ultimately, they have the final say because it is their vision, and as I said, they kind of represent the audience. But being able to be someone that is happy to say they're wrong, I think is really important. Because it creates safety for you as an actor or a developer to try something as well and be wrong and know that it's not going to be a bad thing. And happy to listen to you and be open to answer questions and things like that, not make you feel stupid for asking questions. I think all of those things are skills, something that you can observe someone else doing as well as sort of practicing in yourself. Like talking about, as Ruben said, when you're really close to something and people don't get it. Say, like designing something and someone plays it and they just don't get it, and you're like, it's just because they're an idiot. My design is flawless. It's like, well, no. Are you representing the audience now, or are you just representing yourself and your perfect idea of your design? Do you have to stop, take a step back and say, this is the audience that's coming in, essentially the target market, right? It's like, this is the audience that's coming in, this is their viewpoint, this is their expectations, this is how I make sure that they get the experience that I want to give them. That's something that's practiced over time. And something, I honestly believe it's something that can be learned, not necessarily trained, but experienced and learnt through model behaviour.
You touched on a really good point there with, you know, making sure that you're not just putting out there what you think and communicating your story. But I mean, earlier today we were talking about interactive storytelling, and that's what games really boil down to. How do you guys navigate the I guess, the two conflicting things of, you know, it is a part of yourself, but also it's not? How do you deal with it?
Do you mean this, sorry.
Continue.
I was just going to get clarification on the question, so if you know where you're going.
Go for the clarification just in case.
You're like, I want clarification, please.
Yes. Can you use that in
Yes.
a sentence, please?
Yeah. Would you like to phone a friend?
Do you mean like the gameplay story divide? Or?
Yeah, so the divide of, you know, this is something that you're putting out to the world, and often as artistic people, it can become a part of yourself. But at the end of the day, it is a commercial product, as you said, and it is something that you need to kind of be thinking of a target audience with. Those two things can obviously conflict quite a lot. And how do you navigate the conflict there?
So I can talk a bit about the scaffolding that we had in Wargaming Sydney with UX research. So what I would suggest is, as soon as possible, try and get something in front of players and try and get that feedback loop running. So then when you've built something new, you get feedback from someone who is the target audience. Because you may not, most times you will not be the target audience, so you need to be designing for someone else. So start with interviewing and understanding who your target player is, and then build your process, your day-to-day. Say if you're building on weekly sprints, so then every week you think you will have some new feature, well, get someone to beta test it, and then that will validate that for you. And then on a bigger scale, once you've got a very minimal set of what the core gameplay is, we'll try and get it onto the hands of some players and try and get that feedback loop in.
I really like that, because I was going to be really simplistic about it and just say, grow a thick skin. But you know, it is about taking that ego out of it and not just being, oh, people don't get what I'm trying to do here. It's about saying, oh yeah, this works or this doesn't work. Yeah. Oh, I know how to do this because I know exactly that jump timing or something like that in a platform or
and
something.
And it doesn't mean doing exactly what the players are telling you to do, right? At the end of the day, you have a vision. It's a very strong vision, and that is the game that you're trying to build. This is more about validating. Okay, here, try this. No, that didn't work. Okay, I'll take it back with me and rethink it. But you're not asking the players, okay, what is it that you want to play? No, you're not doing that.
And on that point as well, there's the difference between the feedback that you get and the problem that you're actually solving. Across a lot of media, you will, like as a creative, you get users say, oh, this is really unclear, or I wish I could do this, or why is this doing, you know. So they'll give you very specific feedback of, they'll offer you a solution. And ultimately what you're looking for is what is the problem so you can address it true to your vision so that they have the experience that you want. But as an aside, I think working in games and building games, they are a product ultimately, in the way that movies are a product, in the way that music is a product. It's still for enjoyment and for entertainment and for experiences. We're building experiences and people want to consume that and buy that. But if you want to make a game that is a personal expression, make an art game and expect that it goes nowhere and just understand that this is just personal expression. If it takes off, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, it's like writing something that's just a personal exploration, a personal expression, and you put it on your blog as opposed to trying to find a publisher for it. Ultimately, to me, it comes down to I am making a product for someone who's consuming this. So it always boils down to that person as a consumer, as an audience member, as a player.
For me, I think there might be some form of middle ground where if you start off thinking about the audience, sometimes you're not pushed to innovate. So maybe a good approach would be to start off thinking it's your personal product and slowly transitioning as if you're like raising this child and then you're giving him to the world kind of thing.
That sounds terrifying.
But that's what, like, my thinking is, sometimes people who do take approaches where it's only for the audience, it's like safest option, and you end with a whole lot of products that aren't innovative. And I'm talking from the artist's perspective, of course, not from a producer's perspective who has to be like, Hussein, it doesn't work like that. But yeah, so just, I guess, being able to be crazy and experimental at the start and do something for yourself, but able to like contextualize it to the audience after.
I think it's, again, getting back, it's about listening and communicating. At first, yes, you have your audience, the people who are going to play, then you have your team. And though you can listen to your audience, usually if your team is good, if you work with people that you trust, you should trust them. At the end of the day, listen to your team. I think if you focus too much on the audience, like, let's be honest, we all have several projects, right? So there'll be next project and the next project. And okay, if one of your projects won't go too well, that's fine. Audience will play a different project, but you will continue working with your team. So I think just have a diverse team. Have people with different experience, with different cultural backgrounds, ask their opinion, and listen to them, because they can always bring something interesting to the table.
I've noticed a lot of people investing their personal storytelling and you know, the crazy risky things that they want to do as side hustles. Is that something you guys have personal experience with?
My company started as a side hustle,
Nice.
so yes. Yeah, I think, yeah, talking about side hustles is a bit of a weird thing, because we've kind of, it's probably likely that a few of us were doing games as a side hustle or investing in it as a side hustle, and then it kind of became our main hustle. Is that a word?
It is now.
I think that's a pretty common path, honestly, and it's a good way to like get some experience and you know, work with a small team and figure out what it's like to put an app on the App Store or whatever, in a way that is a lot less risky than, you know, quitting your job and trying to do it full time for 6 or 9 months or you know, whatever it is.
I'm a supporter of side hustles, because we're coming from the non-for-profit industry. You have people who want to help people, but people who also want to express their passions. So I've always been around the world, around the idea that you can still have a full-time job and also pursue a side hustle. And so even moving into the games industry, where sometimes you do fall into those routines, you're not getting burnt out, you're able to balance it by still being able to kind of do the things that keep you going and keep you passionate and experimenting.
Burnout. You used the word.
I tried to avoid it this whole time, like consciously.
I think that, you know, burnout's obviously something a lot of you would have experienced in the past. Do any of you want to jump in and talk about your experiences and, you know, pitfalls that you've come across? Any tips you have for avoiding it?
I feel like my personal experience of burnout has been not feeling like I'm part of a team or part of a project, really. It's very much, it's not really slavery, but it feels akin to slavery, where someone comes down from on high, tells you to do something, you're not given a reason why you're doing it, or you're not seeing the big picture, and you don't get a say in it. And I kind of feel like it's not the whole picture, right? There's obviously like spending 12 hours at work or doing that for several days or several months at a time, sort of thing. But I find that excitement for working on stuff kind of evaporates super quickly if you get that.
So
Yeah.
disillusionment and not feeling like
Yeah.
you're part of a broader picture is a key recipe to burnout. Would you agree, Ellen?
I've kind of experienced the opposite, where it's, as I said, a lot of, I think it was about 9 months of overtime or something like that, and that's 3 or 4 days a week, minimum 3 hours, but could be there for like 12 or so hours. No, wait, 3 hours is 12 hours, but like through till midnight, say, and or even 1 or 2 a.m. For me, it was a physical thing and a fear based thing of kind of like, oh, if this goes wrong, then what's going to happen? And I've got to mitigate against that, and I've got to protect, and I've got to do this. And it's kind of an overwork thing where you're just on high alert for so long that essentially your adrenal glands get worn out, and all you can do is just be like, I want to sleep all weekend. I don't want to do anything. I've just, you know, and you kind of lose faith in yourself, and you don't want to do anything outside, which is terrible as well, because then you don't have the chance to kind of work on the thing that you are truly passionate about. You're like, I'm just shipping an update, and I don't really care. Like, that's all my life now. And that's one of the reasons I left Gameloft, because it was just absolutely exhausting. So, you know, I kind of got used to the idea that they're going to ask me to do something, and why top management said so, because someone tested something and all of these things, and it's like, it doesn't matter, it has to be out now. And so there was no time to even stop and go like, well, why am I just doing what they say? It's like, I've got to do it out. I've got to get it out, because I've got to respond to this, because otherwise the studio might close down. It was very much a fear culture, and so that was my come down from that. And ultimately it was like, take 2 weeks off, take 3 weeks off, just stop and do nothing, and let yourself be okay with doing nothing. Don't give in to those urges of, I need to be doing something. Let yourself get bored. I think getting bored and doing nothing is the best, most restorative thing in the world. And it's so hard to do, because everyone's got their phones, and everyone's got things that they should do, things that they can read, or they should be working on this. I constantly feel like I'm behind on all of the projects and experiments that I want to do on top of my workday. And I just have to remind myself, it's okay to have a night where I do nothing. It's okay to have a weekend where nothing happens, and I just sit and, like on my way home now, I'll stop and I'll get off at a train station before me, which has a nice park, and I'll just stop and I'll just sit and stare at nothing. And I'll just take as long as I need, and that's the most calming, most restorative thing I can do.
I've taken up cross stitch.
Oh, nice. Very meditative.
A bit from a team leading perspective, I know it's going to sound probably silly, but sometimes your managers just don't know. And I know it sounds really strange, but especially if they're also part of this crunch, they're also doing it. When you're so focused, you don't notice that other people are burning out around you. So sometimes it's a good idea to actually have this conversation with your manager. Let them know. It's not like people are evil. I don't believe that people are genuinely evil, but sometimes they don't notice things. And if you need a couple of days off, if you want to move to a different project, like, people are generally invested into each other if they work in a team. So if they know that something is happening to you, it's better for you and for them to let them know that this is happening.
Communication seems to be coming up so much. Is it at the core of everything? This is a yes/no question. You can all nod or shake your head.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Jeremy's just kind of staring.
Are you? You realize
okay,
you're
Jeremy?
Communicating with the computer.
Yeah, there's a way I'm communicating. No, yeah, it is the heart of everything. Essentially, is communicating. Yeah, and not just one-way communication as well. So, because I've just found in some situations, some people tend to. It's very much, you know how you can sometimes speak to someone and they're kind of not there, or they'll ask you a question and it's like, I kind of sent an email about that, and there's like, you know, you were flagged on a bunch of things and now you've come to me for it. So it's very much they expect to be able to talk at you and not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so communication.
Hussein, does your psychology degree help you with communication?
No. My awkwardness kind of like negates that. Picking up from more of, I guess, the communication stuff, I think a lot of the times we expect communication to just be like a verbal discussion, but I think communication carries through the processes, how you communicate, for example, because I work with the 2D art team, I'm the team lead, and it's like you're trying to help the team communicate what they're trying to express through their art. So it's also about building proper processes in terms of like, so that they're able to better communicate what they want to say, even if without the use of like verbal communication, because I think sometimes it happens when people in management, and it does happen to myself too, when you only expect someone to come to you and verbally say, I have this idea, without being like, without seeing it in your team's work, or helping your team kind of express it in a certain way. For example, even something as simple as building mood boards. That's a form of communication, but sometimes it's underutilized, and something as simple as that can cause a lot of all of these issues in terms of vision and not knowing where you are. And, yeah.
Absolutely. Ruben, this industry has changed a fair amount, continuing to change. What do you think the most important thing for this industry is to keep in mind of?
Oh man, can I say
Just
communication again?
I mean, it seems to be the key word. Everybody tweet communication.
Yeah, the thing I love about the games industry, and I guess I get to experience this because I do work in a consultancy where we kind of get to try out a bunch of different things. It's really strange to me how many different types of like games or gaming there is out there that I just would have never considered. We're working with somebody at the moment who produces arcade cabinets for like entertainment venues, like bars and mini golf places and all those kinds of places. And it's something that I knew existed 20 years ago, but in my head I don't think, oh, games can be this and it can be that and it can be that. I think it's important to keep in mind that games is growing more and more, and there's so many different cool things that people are doing. There's always fun opportunities to find interesting different things to do. That's what I like to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, touching on the industry and the fact that you get to see a whole bunch of games. I mean, a lovely sign fell over earlier and you picked it up. Did you maybe want to talk through it a little bit and tell us about what it's about?
Sure.
Yes, segues.
Yeah, perfect segue. So this panel has been helped put together by a group called Games Industry Group New South Wales, which is this is the first time we've been talking about it publicly. So, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Basically, a group that's based in New South Wales of a bunch of studios. I think every studio that has people represented here, and some more, with the goal of just kind of getting these studios together and talking more about the industry and the industry in New South Wales specifically. I think we hear a lot whenever anyone talks about games in Australia. They say, oh, well, Melbourne. And one of the main goals of the group is to make it so that people stop mentioning Melbourne so much and talk more about Sydney.
As much. They can still mention Melbourne.
Yes,
but
of course.
Not an anti-Melbourne panel,
No.
just for anybody from Melbourne out there. I love you guys. I'm from there too.
But it's the opposite. It's being inspired by
exactly.
the amazing vibe that is in Melbourne, and how can we do that in Sydney?
Trying to catch up,
And
I
leverage,
suppose. Yeah, so if you're interested in checking out the group, we have a URL here, and I think it was on the slide before as well.
Yeah.
Gamesindustrygroup.org, if you're interested, or come chat to me, I guess.
We've got about 8 minutes left. I might see whether the audience is interested in maybe having a chat. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, before I even started. Oh, you're going to handle...
Oh,
I don't
bam.
even need to do anything.
So professional.
I was kind of half like, maybe I could use this as an excuse to stretch. So I'm just going to do that while you ask a question. Hi, what's your name?
Is it on? Hi, I'm Lizelle.
Hello.
Wow. Whoa.
It's fine. We can hear you normally. It's just because you're right next to a speaker, I think.
Okay. For GIG, what was it called again?
Games Industry Group, New South Wales.
Games Industry Group.
Yeah.
Are there any other events that you guys work?
That is a great question.
Are you a plant?
Yeah, I know. That's such a perfect question. Yes, there are. One example is we're partnering with another group that's running events in Sydney called Waypoint.
Yes.
Their first event is a kind of networking for people in the games industry. We've got a lot of things coming up. The best place to stay tuned is on the website. We have a mailing list, so if you want to find out about more events that are happening around Sydney, head to the URL and pop your name and email down and you'll find out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I feel like from this panel, community is just so important.
Yeah.
It's really great that groups like this are popping up every now and then. I think someone mentioned earlier it's inspired by Melbourne. I think a lot of Melbourne's great strong suits is the fact they have a wonderful community. So I would hugely encourage anyone out there who's thinking about it, rock up, come to these events. I mean, things like this are so important. So does anybody else have a wonderful question? Hello. We're going to, fantastic. I don't need to do anything. This is great.
Hi. So I guess this is saying that to want to work in games, you have to kind of hate games a bit. I guess it's more about the idea that you kind of see games as like not quite doing the things that you want to do, and you want to be that voice and work in games and make the games that you want to see in the world. And then there's also the sense where if you work on games all day, you kind of like have not as much time to play games, and so a lot of people don't really play games as much when they're working in games. So I guess like my actual question is, how has your perception and your engagement of games changed since you've started working in games?
Oh, I
Amazing
think working in
question.
QA does amazing things to your game experiences. But for me, I'm in QA because I see it a bit as an investigative work. Because I'm like, how can I break this thing? Oh my God, it's very exciting. So yeah, I notice bugs a lot more. Because like, oh, it's a bug. That's the first thing. But on the other hand, I think you kind of appreciate it more. Because you know how much hard work is in there. You know how hard people worked to do this. So it's also, I mean, you see the bad things more clearly, but you also see good things more clearly. I think that's for me.
Have any of you lost that sense of wonder that you used to have as a kid when you loaded up, Metal Gear Solid in black and white?
I think I actually second what you say. I think the sense of wonder, it has increased because now I know of all of the tech research and all of that effort and the skills that go into making a wonderful experience. So if you're making your own game and then this new game comes out and you know what is the technology that backs that, you're like, whoa, I want that in my game. And now you can work towards that. So you're more informed, but I think in a way that, that makes the experience even better.
I think about it. You see a lot of people doing like video game or essay styles on YouTube, and they do like all these deep analysis of games, and you see people watch it and feel like their experience of the game is more enriched. I feel like working in the industry, you get that on like the everyday basis. It's normal conversation that happens in the office, or you just play a random game, and internally you're thinking of all of these stuff, and it just makes you happier. Like you feel more immersed in the world, strangely.
Yeah. For me, I notice bugs less because I'm just like, oh, that's okay. And I just keep going. Like, I know, it's all right. You probably tested this a million times. It's fine. Like, just keep going. Like, cut them a break.
You're more forgiving.
Yes, I'm far more forgiving. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. And I keep going. But for me, it's kind of like seeing behind the curtain. So to begin with, it sort of spoils the magic a little bit. It'd be like, if you really, really, really love Marvel movies and you've never been to a movie set, you've never been to a play, you've never seen any actors before, and then you walk in and you're like, oh my God, this is a stage, and like, Marvel actor of your choice is there, and they're like, Hemsworth is there, and he's like in a mocap suit, which might be good, but like, and he's like got like, he's fighting against something that's like a green thing on a stick, and you're like, what is this? Like, this isn't a movie, this isn't enjoyable, this isn't fun. But then afterwards, when you kind of go through the whole pipeline and you see everything, you start seeing the final product and going, I wonder how they did that. That's really clever. I see what they did there. So it is that kind of transition from seeing it for the spectacle and then coming through the other side and seeing the artistry. And I think it is, as a few of us have said, like it is that sort of deeper admiration and enjoyment from that perspective.
So we've got a bunch of people kind of wandering on in, and I'm sure that I'm about to get a time's up card thrust at me in a couple of seconds. So I wanted to kind of close it off with something a bit inspiring and lovely. So I'll go through each of you one at a time. If you want to just kind of share with us, if you had an Avengers time travel ability and you could go back and tell yourself one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be? And I'm going to pick on you, Paulina, because you're next to me. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Right
next to me.
That's good. I feel like I have a good one. Personally, I feel like I jumped into production too early, and I would have liked at the beginning of my career to do a bit more of the craft. So either as a developer, as an artist, or as QA, get a better sense of what it takes, what the development workflow for a game is before jumping into managing people. That's a fairly big, steep jump, because that would have given me a better language at the beginning as a producer to speak with the developers and the artists. So for anyone thinking about production, maybe have a think about not going in too early.
Jeremy.
Cut the blue wire. He will betray you. Don't trust him.
Oh, Lord.
Learn programming specifically, learn math, and be more empathetic, I think, because that is kind of the basis for communication, and you need that.
Wonderful. Ellen?
I don't know. I'm trying to really think. Keep going. I don't know. Like
deep.
You can learn anything. You can get on top of everything. You can maybe be confident. No, I used to be super confident, so I don't even know anymore.
So just shredded you.
I'm just no, just don't worry as much, I think, is just the number one thing. Follow your passions, no matter what you're interested in. Somehow those random things that you like will make it into something. It will inform everything you do. Don't feel like anything is wasted, basically.
I think mine would be kind of like learn and teach. There's a lot of people with all these different skills. It's kind of this still flexible industry, and each person knows this little bit. So start that communication, find people who have stuff to teach you, and you have things to learn from, because there's a lot of that.
I think I'm actually pretty happy with my career currently, but for me the advice would be to get into community work more and a bit earlier, because currently I do a lot of like workshops for women who code and uses code and all of that, and it's very satisfying. So if you can give something to the community, just do it, because it will work out. Like it's an amazing feeling.
Lucky last, Ruben.
For me, I think pay attention to advertising and marketing. I always used to worry about making the games, but you also need to worry and pay attention to like releasing the games and marketing the games and selling the games, because you're not going to have a successful game if you just make a game and put it on itch and forget about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, everybody, and thank you to the audience for being so wonderful. Our time is now officially up. So I think at some point there was a slide with everybody's social media handles on it. If not, maybe just come and chat to them and follow them on social media once you've found out what it is. No, they're not going to change the slide. They're looking at me like, no, it's not. Oh, yay, they did it. So you can give everybody a follow, have a chat to them after. They're all wonderful people and happy to chat at any point. So thanks again, guys. Enjoy the rest of your conference.